this episode, we will take a tour of the boat Paradisia with our hosts Bob and Maureen. So tell us about the rig.
Okay, so this is an Island Packet 40 is the model, and made by Island Packet Yachts out of Largo, Florida, which is near Tampa Bay. And they've been making boats since 1979. Johnson is the architect that designed these boats. And Island Packets tend to have several characteristics. You can really recognize them from afar, and they have a nice profile. First of all, they have just this classic line, starting with the bowsprit, and kind of a sweeping line for sailboats. Always looks very kind of sweet and aerodynamic. It's a cutter rig in that we have a staysail behind the jib. The boats are all beige. Now, there's some controversy here because they can be different color beiges. For example, Santa Mara tends to be a little bit more on the sort of yellowish tine. We're a little bit more on the red side. But anyways, they're beige, cutter rigged, bowsprits, and basically with just enough wood to make it look kind of nice on the deck.
And this is a 1997.
1997, yeah. And they made these boats from roughly 1995 until 2002.
So they're not manufactured.
They're not manufactured anymore, no. Not this particular model. They make others that are similar, but and a lot of people have felt that the IP40 was sort of the classic sort of pinnacle of the design for the Island Packet boats.
Is this a full keel?
It's a full keel boat. The keel starts about here, sweeps back, and it's lead line, and there's about 5,000 pounds of lead.
It's called a shoal keel, so it's shallow. Maybe 5 feet is what our draft is.
That's good.
And that makes it very nice for getting in. It's a big, heavy blue water boat, so you feel very safe.
Right.
And as someone has told me before, is that your boat will outlast you much longer on the water.
Yeah, and when you're inside the boat and you're doing work on the boat and you see how it's constructed, I mean, it's just pretty amazing the way the boat is put together, how the bulkheads, they're all sealed with fiberglass, everything is painted and sealed, and so you can just get a really incredible feel for the construction and the integrity of the whole boat, and makes you feel, like I said, when you really need to be safe in a bad weather condition, at least you can feel the boat's going to outperform what your limitations might be.
Sure. One of the most important things to most cruisers is their anchor.
Right.
So tell us about yours.
Okay, so this is a spade anchor. It's sort of a reverse plow. It's sort of the latest design in anchors. It's folded in, and more importantly is that there's lead here, so that the center of gravity of the anchor is at the tip. So as you pull on it with the shank, it pulls it down further and further into the sand or mud. So it's self-setting, and it stays set because of the design of the anchor. And it was very highly rated at the time I got it in Practical Sailor. At the time, I think it was the highest ranking, meaning that it took the highest amount of force to dislodge this anchor compared to other anchors. And there are several others, Mantis and others, that are on the market. Roca, Mantis have similar design for the same reason, because of how it catches the bottom.
So you're very confident when
So, we've had the anchor, we've been using it pretty much full time since 2014 or so, and so I don't know, we've used it 500 or 600 times, all the way from Alaska down through Mexico, and basically it's always held like it's supposed to, so which means we sleep nice at night, and we have good confidence that the anchor is doing what it's supposed to do confidently. And this is very important, certainly when you've got your home and everything, all your valuables are attached to the anchor. We replaced the chain, so we have new galvanized 5/16 chain, and basically
300 feet.
We have 300 feet of chain on this particular anchor. And we do have other anchors. We have a CQR anchor, which is like a backup anchor if this were to get lost. And we have in the back a stern anchor, a Fortress Danforth anchor on a long road that we can deploy from the back of the boat, which we've occasionally done to stabilize the boat so it won't rock and roll or reduce.
I do want to ask a question about the yellow buoys. I've seen that in the water with your anchor.
Yeah, these are anchor marker buoys that, not everybody uses, but we've started using them. We've always wanted to have a system, so I had some leftover line that's heavy. It means it sinks, and these are buoys that are left over from when we were doing crabbing in Alaska. We can attach it to the front here. And what that does is when it goes down, it shows you exactly where your anchor is, and then the relationship to the boat to the anchor is always something you can know. For example, the boat, you could have put the anchor in one direction, and then the wind causes it to go another direction. You have to make sure that it's set and that you're not moving, so it's a safety issue. And also, when you tie it here with a strong line, you have the option of being able to either retrieve or get the anchor out if it gets stuck or something like that. Anyways.
Have you ever had any issues with it? Because we used one before, and we had to get stuck on our dagger boards. And
well,
things.
you know, it's almost nothing in sailing doesn't have some kind of consequence.
Yeah.
And most of it is like unknown consequences,
Yeah.
you know, the unintended consequence, let's put it that way. So you put it down, and then all of a sudden you go to get the anchor up, and the anchor's got a twist in it, and it starts to twist around the anchor, and then the wind is blowing this way, and you're trying to pull the boat back that way, and all of a sudden it's like tied in a square knot. But the main thing is you don't want it to get back by the prop. So our longest line is only 38 feet.
Yeah.
So even from here, we really it can't get to the back of the boat. And more or less with those limitations, although the other day I had it on with a stainless steel carabiner that bent because it got sort of wrong way when the anchor was being pulled up. But it's not, nothing is without some consequence. But I feel that the information, it feels confident where we are. The marker seems to be worth a little extra effort.
And they're great in a crowded anchorage too. It lets other people know where your anchor is.
So hopefully they don't anchor too close to you.
Yeah, so you know, one of the problems in a crowded anchorage course is that people put their anchor down and then they start to move back. If they don't know where your anchor is, they can cover up your anchor, which means it's very difficult for you then to move forward and pull your anchor up.
Sure.
So for them to know where your anchor is and where you know your anchor is, this has a lot of valuable information, particularly as we go to the Caribbean. There'll be many more boats down here.
Well, I've been admiring your sun cover. That's just a big, beautiful sun cover. Tell us about it.
Okay, actually it's 2 sunshades. I got them off of Amazon, and they were just the biggest ones you could get, I think 17 by 20 or something. And then we had it modified, so with someone in La Cruz, he came up and cut it and reinforced it to go around our staysail and around the mast, and then also put the straps on it and reinforced it. Down here especially, the sun is so intense that if you can get any shade from the sun, it drops the temperature dramatically. So
we've had your cabin a lot cooler.
Keeps the cabin a lot cooler. Besides having put in installed an air conditioner in there, but then of course an air conditioner you can only use in a marina.
Sure.
When you're there and plugged into electricity. Otherwise, if you're going to be in an anchorage for a while and you put this up, this makes a big difference on keeping it. The sun from beating down on you constantly.
Does it take a lot of time to put this up, or is it a big hassle?
Actually, now it's down to maybe 10 minutes
to
put it. It's an easy system. It seemed like a lot at first, but it's certainly worth the effort to put it up. And so as soon as we're going to be somewhere for about a week, we try to put it up. It's definitely worth putting it up, yes.
Okay. And one of the, so island packets have these characteristics. They're cutter rigged, so they always have staysail and a jib. In this particular case, they also have called a Hoyt, an H-O-Y-T, Hoyt boom. Ours happens to be straight, and right now it's up, so it frees up the foredeck, so that when we are at anchor, we have a complete foredeck. But when we're sailing, it comes down, and the way it's rigged up, it's called self-tacking. Just like the mainsail can tack back and forth when you're coming about, the Hoyt boom allows the staysail to do the same thing.
Oh, that's a big help.
So you don't have to be messing with any of the rigging. It'll come back and forth on its own as you tack into the wind. And so that is a really big advantage. It's less work, and it still gives you the advantage of having a staysail available to be another combination of sails. So we use it a lot motor sailing. Typically we'll have the mainsail up and the staysail up. And it makes the boat quite a bit more stable. It doesn't move so much. We're always able to pick up at least a half a knot when we have the Hoyt boom down and the staysail out. All right, so I think you had asked me a couple of things on the outside before we go inside and get out of the sun. So our boat has the Hoyt boom. We've discussed that. Also, we have a whisker pole that is secured on the mast, and that allows us to go downwind. Whisker pole holds the sails out. You can go wing on wing. It's also used for the flopper stopper, which reduces our rolliness when we're at anchor. So we use the whisker pole quite a bit, and sometimes we even use the whisker pole to hold up the sunshade. So the whisker pole is a really nice feature. It has a lot of different functions, but when we don't need it, it's nice because it's up against the mast. It's out of the way. The other thing we have on the mainsail, which you can see under the cover here, is a sail bag. And you're familiar with how important a sail bag is, and that allows the sail to stay basically folded. And you see where the yellow star is, you go all the way back. That's actually a bag that's normally held up with lazy jacks, and it makes it easy to drop the sail with almost no attention to it, because you leave the bag open, you come into the wind, and you can literally just drop the sail in a matter of seconds. And so that secures the mainsail when you don't want to be up on the deck. So in the back of our boat, we have several important features in the back of the cockpit. First of all, we have the obvious. We have our dinghy. Dinghy is like your car to the shore. It's our lifeline, our life raft, and etc. And it's very important. It's secured by being on this structure in the back on davits, and above the davits to provide refreshing charge for our batteries is a big solar array, solar panels. And that will, under the right conditions, charge our batteries every day if it's sunny and oriented the correct way. And this allows us to keep some of the equipment in the back of the boat and easy access to our dinghy, which we use quite a bit.
Hi, we're back with Bob and Maureen on their fabulous Island Packet 40. Here we are in the cockpit. So
welcome.
Yeah, you're in your captain's chair.
I'm in my captain's chair.
I understand you do most of the driving.
I do most of the driving in the boat, getting it in and out of the slips, and when we're at sea. But then Bob, he runs around and does all the cleanup of the deck and keeping things in order.
It's a team
She's
effort.
the admiral, and I'm the deckhand.
Right. So, yeah.
So yeah, tell us about your instruments. What do you use as your package for your navigation?
Okay. We have a Garmin chart plotter, and we're very familiar with Garmin products and like them. So
you were pilots before.
We were pilots. We owned an airplane, Cessna 206, and had Garmin instruments. And so one of the transitions when you become a sailor is you have to become familiar with instruments and with radar, especially because who knows when you're in the fog and you still need to keep going. But the important thing is always trust your instruments. So we have the Garmin chart plotter, and we can superimpose the radar on top of that, and which we especially use at night. We can split the screen and have half chart plotter and half radar on top of it. We have a wind meter and a depth sounder and an autopilot. And they're all interconnected.
Great.
And AIS.
We have AIS. We got the transmit and the receive for the AIS.
It's a great feature.
It's a great feature, and I think it's a very popular feature, and I bet all boats are going to have
From
them.
a safety feature, when you're cruising, particularly in unfamiliar water, I'd say it's just about mandatory.
You do see boats out there here that don't have an AIS, and it's very alarming sometimes. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
We also use our iPad for navionics and
backup navigation.
Backup, which is actually more accurate information than what the chart plotter is. Sometimes the chart plotter will show that we're on land when because especially in Mexico, the maps are not updated like they are in the States, so you have to know that there is a discrepancy.
So tell me about your iPad. I know that you used that recently. And what happened when you're coming in to this
Actually,
marina?
coming in, the most important time for using our iPad for navionics is when you're coming into a closed area and getting into shallow water and you want to know the exact depth. And
yes, of course.
So just as I was coming in the breakwater here, I had my iPad sitting here, and it happened to be in the sun. And just as I looked down to see what the depth of the water was, it flashed, this is too hot, I'm gonna explode.
And it turned itself off.
And it turned itself off, so we had no
that's good
information.
To remember. Keep it cool, yeah.
You have to keep it cool and out of the sun. Luckily, he has a backup navionics
we have backup.
on his phone.
So I have navionics on my phone, so that was active, so she could just put that in front of her. And then we also have OpenCPN. You can navigate off of that. So we actually have 3 different databases that we can rely on.
So if one goes down, you still have
we have
other
backup. And you have to be very careful when you're putting your phones or navionics or anything metal on your
Near the compass.
console, near the compass, because it can throw the compass off. So that's an important thing. But this is our instrument panel, and we keep covers on them when we're anchored or
But you know, adverse weather, fog, night, or any combination, we can actually run the boat very safely.
So this seems very comfortable in here. You have your Dodger
Yes.
to
Right.
keep you protected
Out of the
from
weather
sun,
almost
and-
all the time, out of the sun and
But you
out of the
still
night.
have a breeze.
Now,
and
when
some-
you buy a new boat and a bare boat, you don't have these features. Like, you don't have these instruments, you don't
No.
have the Dodger.
you have to make it yours.
You have to make it yours. So
some research
the
and find
Dodger
out.
was all added. When we bought the boat, it had the Dodger and part of the bimini, and then we've added screens. And for when we were in the Pacific Northwest, we also added windows, the strata-glass windows, so that this actually became an extra room for the boat. We even put a heating vent in here because we put
well,
a
in the Pacific
heater in the boat.
Northwest, you needed
Yeah.
that.
You need it, but it opened the boat up. It made this part of the
Yeah.
boat usable when the weather was bad.
Outdoor
so,
living.
outdoors. So
Tell me about your steering. Is this? It's not hydraulic. It's
No.
rocking.
And it's rack and pinion steer. It's another kind of feature of Island Packet.
Oh, okay.
So they, you know, it's a blue water boat. They tried to think of everything they could do to make the boat stronger and safer in adverse conditions. And one of them is rack and pinion steering. So there's a direct link between the steering. Here, the steering wheel goes on here, obviously. It's a direct mechanical link between that and the rudder. There's no chains, there's no pulleys, there's no hydraulics. It's a direct mechanical link. So it's virtually it's a situation we can't say never, but you know, somebody would have to have a major breakage for the rudder to become disengaged. And also, our rudder is mounted on 2 points rather than like a spade, which is mounted on the top and sticks in the water. We have a support at the bottom, which comes off of the keel. So basically, the rudder is basically held on 2 parts, and the bottom is fixed with a little bridge to the keel, so that it's supported on the strength of the keel. So there's it's an extra feature of safety and redundancy, and the way the linkage is done. It's
So
very,
do you feel? Is it a really good feel when you're driving? Do you really feel it? Really
oh,
well?
definitely. Except with a full keel, you just don't get the quick response that you're used to with a thin keel boat. And you can't turn as fast, and especially when we go in reverse, it just thinks about going in reverse.
so in a full
and
keel
turning.
boat, when you put it in reverse and you go back, it's just a suggestion because the boat really wants to go just forward in a straight line, and then now you're forcing it to bend backwards. We've had some really close calls or hilarious or energized experiences pulling out of slips in the wind.
Docking can be a challenge.
We have actually turned the boat to go like to one side, like to starboard, and the boat completely goes to port side. That's the problem with the full keel. There's ways around it. We use various kinds of strategies with the dock lines, and you can pull and push the bow, and you can make the turns happen with these kinds of spring lines.
But you can't do a complete turn.
You can, but you have to go forward and back and forward and back.
Backing into slip is difficult.
Yeah.
He talked about the dinghy over here
Yes.
being, and the davits on it, and I was just going to point out, I do have a hammock swing on here that we put up on the davits, and so when we're at anchor, I can put this down and the dinghy down and sit in my swing off of the davits, and that's a nice feature.
And in the shade of the solar panels, so
You've created a lot of nice amenities to make it very comfortable.
The other part too is this chair. Since I sit here most of the time and I'm short, I have a hard time seeing to the bow of the boat. And so this is another West Marine product, which is the big captain's chair, and it sits on top of a
little
a
pad.
pedestal pad. And then I also
So it's high enough for you.
yes, and then I have my little stool that I can rest my feet on. Because otherwise I can't reach the deck there when I'm sitting in my chair. So it's very nice. We've made a lot of contributions, such as he put the
Barbecue.
barbecue
is important.
outside. We keep it outside all the time, and he got a special tank so that it's separate from our
Oh, that's nice.
LP tanks, and it has its own
propane out.
propane.
We have XM, and that's an XM, so we get Sirius XM all the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you can listen to broadcasts out here.
Yeah.
You can listen to broadcasts we've
Yeah.
been
We
listening
have our
to.
speakers out here, so we get XM all the time. And then we have the Fusion also with a Bluetooth on auxiliary, so you can play things off your radio. So like with the Skyroam now, thank you. These guys introduced us to Skyroam. You know, we can listen to, while we're going down the coast of Mexico even, we can listen to the news. We've watched streaming from Netflix. We watched PBS Evening News Hour.
Makes the long watches a
does.
little more
Definitely.
fun.
So basically, you know, you can have a lot of connectivity now that just you couldn't even dream about, even last year. Much better
When we're
this year than last
cruising,
year.
we'll listen to books on tape because we have a speaker system out here. And it's a comfortable cockpit right now.
It's a nice breeze.
Small, but
Feels
a
so
nice
much
breeze coming in.
cooler than.
But at least we have the option of being protected. So like it's very windy and there's a lot of water splashing. On the windward side, we can drop down that net.
Yeah.
It cuts the wind down by 70%, and you can be back here much more comfortably. And of course, we're always out of the sun, so at least very important for Maureen's delicate, beautiful skin. We're trying to keep it that way by being out of the
So
sun.
we usually keep our life vests here. We have our
Feathers.
tethers here. We have a jack line all around the boat, so
Safety.
for a safety feature. And I think those are very important. I think the biggest change we made out there is it used to make me nervous when we would drop the sail for him to go out on deck and flake the sail. And so we had a sail bag made. So now from the cockpit we can just drop the sail
that's a
down
great
into the
feature.
bag, and then he can fool with it once we get somewhere that's stable and doesn't have to go out on deck most of the time.
And like
so.
many modern boats, we can do all these sail adjustments from the cockpit.
Yeah.
So we never have to go on deck if we don't want to. And that's really helpful. Putting on a reef or putting down up and down the sails.
Are your winches electric?
No.
Or they're all.
They're automatic. So if I go like this, it automatically goes up. And if I go down, it automatically goes
Keeps
down.
you in shape.
It's
right?
automatic when I'm there, yes.
Another important feature in the Dodger, which a lot of boats don't have, is that we did take the center window and made that able to be opened, which allows for the air to come through.
And better visibility a little bit.
And better visibility, and then in our Dodger cover, we also had a window put in there, so when the cover's on, we can still open that center window, and that makes a big difference in the amount
And we have
of
our
air.
skylights, and that allows us to
See,
not only light up the area where our table is, but also to see the sail adjustments from the cockpit without sticking
cool.
your head out. Yeah. So we've added
How
those
fast
things.
do you go?
Well, this
Average.
is a bit more like a tugboat, and as you are well aware, we go a lot slower than a catamaran. So,
about 6 knots.
with our motor running at 2,500 RPM, we do 6.5 knots.
Yeah.
And then depending on the wind, we can sail. We've sailed the boat as fast as 8.5 knots. But generally, the longer the boat, the faster it goes. And so compared to sort of waterline, we're a little on the slower side. But,
But it's comfortable.
it's very comfortable for
that's-
sailing. And a full keel boat like this, basically, they sail better if they're not heeling very much. So whereas some racing boats like to heel, and that makes their hull profile narrow, in this boat the narrowest profile is actually when there's no heeling.
Yeah.
So we kind of adjust the sails so the boat's up in the water, makes it more
Plus
comfortable.
we're cruisers,
Right.
and I don't want things tossing around downstairs. So.
I'm sailing a touch of liberty. I'm sailing time.